Hello, Park City. How's everyone doing? Looks like that was right. The sugar, I think, did a lot of good work on everyone. Look, it's becoming the end of the day, and I know pretty much, it's always a bit of a challenge, pretty much, staying awake at the end of the day, getting information in. So I'm really thankful to all of you, and really to all the conference team as well for having me here today. So look, we're going to be tackling a bit of a complex topic, pretty much. Since we're going to be talking a bit about complex state and talking a bit about how we can pretty much deal with using advanced hooks and context techniques to be able to deal with that. So just a quick show of hands, like who here has already experienced like complexity or is dealing with a project right now that deals with like complexity with React components? Okay, quite a number. Well, we're going to talk a bit about strategies to be able to deal with these things then. So before we go straight into it, I'm just going to briefly introduce myself. So again, as a task, I'm Renaldi, software engineer and AWS consultant. So currently I'm certified in alternate certification from AWS. I'm also an instructor and author, currently writing the Azure AI Engineer Associate Study Guide. And also have been an international speaker at over 40 events and conferences. So this is something I really like doing, just getting down to the ground, getting in the community, and just really just sharing a bit more and learning from all of you as well alongside too, because throughout these past 2 days, I've been learning a lot from all of you as well, and pretty much getting to know a bit more about your challenges and pretty much about what your own interests and projects are as well. And I'm also involved within the Melbourne Python meetup. So I came from Australia, from Melbourne. So yeah, bit of a tricky getting used to the time zones and all again, pretty much. It was a long flight, but yeah, just glad to be here. And yeah, in general, I just enjoy all things AWS, open source, Gen AI, virtual reality, and yeah, just really building more components and pretty much building really effective ways of dealing with things with React and the like. So, a bit of an agenda of what we're going to get into. We're firstly going to quickly glance over hooks and context API basics. I know like most of you probably already have somewhat of a good idea of pretty much using hooks or context API basics, and I want to get a bit more into the complexities and the challenges to do it. So we're just going to do a brief run through of those. After that, I'll be going into talking a bit about creating reusable custom hooks for stateful logic. Then finally going into looking at context API with hooks to manage global state, looking at some code examples and practical use cases, and finally just going to take through some key takeaways and Q&A session. So the approach I'm going to take in this talk is going to be in the sense that I'm going to be more or less talking about different hooks, different context components, and pretty much what this is all going to build to is one application which I will demo at the end. So essentially, we're talking through all these different hooks, these different strategies that you can use, these patterns, and finally just commingling it all together to be able to create one complex application, which we will see how they all can work together well. So, bit of a quick overview on hooks and context API. Hooks, introduced in React 16.8. And really what it is able to do is it just allows functional components to use state and other React features. So essentially just a great way for you to be able to track state, try to basically ensure that everything is within synchronization, and really be able to keep track of how you're able to manage state within different components within React. And context, on the other hand, provides a way to pass data across the component tree and essentially helps avoid the potential for prop drilling, which is passing props through many levels. And this is a challenge that I'm sure a lot of us have already encountered as well when we look at managing React components. So getting into this, I want you to keep this acronym in your mind, REACTs. This is something that you'll have to keep in mind when you look into managing complex applications regarding hooks and also context. So what does React stands for? Robust, effective, advanced, context, testing, and solutions. So robust in the sense that we want to be able to build more resilient and strong solutions for state management. So we need to be able to create solutions that can really last the different kinds of state challenges that we'll face and really manage these complexities. So we need to make it robust. Effective in the sense that we want to focus on the efficiency and the maintainability within the React code base, because then again, oftentimes it's not only you who's going to be working on the code, it's going to be other people. So it's important to ensure that this is maintained and also in terms of performance, efficient. Advanced in the sense that we want to use advanced hooks and context techniques. Context in the sense that we are using the context API itself for managing global state. And this is something that we'll also go into a bit as well, pretty much within local state management, global state management, and how to manage these complexities. Testing, to be able to incorporate best practices for testing complex state management scenarios. And finally, solutions. How we can approach this problem from a solutions-based perspective. That is, in the sense that we want to encompass these strategies and techniques for managing state within React applications. So oftentimes, we need to approach these kinds of problems from a solutions-based perspective, looking at it in the sense that how do we address this problem in the most efficient and performant way. And also, if, for instance, if you're an organization or if you're creating it, for instance, for a client, how do you look at it from a customer perspective as well? So it's very important. And keep in mind this particular acronym because it's going to be important, and you'll see slowly that the code components and also the different React components that I'm going to be talking about today and the code components that I'll be showing will pretty much be incorporating this. So to start off with, let's talk a bit about incorporating custom hooks for stateful logic. So the scenario that I'm going to be putting through in this case is a collaborative story platform. So essentially, it's really more or less a platform in which you can write a line of what you want the story to continue on. So for instance, let's say a story starts with once upon a time, then someone else can chip in and say, there lived a little girl named, and then like someone else can chip in. So essentially, you can already see that this is something that would probably warrant complexities given that we need to manage the state globally and also still maintain the essence of being able to keep track of who is writing what and really be able to do these things well. So in this case scenario, I'm going to be just giving a bit of a local example in this case. So we're not going to be looking too deeply into the back-end side of things, but I'm going to focus more on the front-end side of things, as you can see over here. So custom hooks itself are pretty much reusable functions that encapsulate stateful logic, and in general, they're really good for maintainability and modularity of code. So here's an example of one custom hook that I created in particular for stateful logic for my solution. So pretty much in this case, I want to be able to manage the different stories, the contributions, the votes. So how do I do this? I create a hook to be able to keep track of the different stories, contributions. As you can see over here, we're pretty much starting off with more or less like a small template first, but we're going to be keeping track of that as we go along. We're going to be giving those initial contributions, initial stories, and after that, we're going to be keeping track of the state of how these are going to be ingested. And of course, we're going to be then using useEffect to be able to accordingly save the items as well and accordingly synchronize them to be able to be displayed as soon as you submit them. So it helps with persisting data within local storage in particular, in this case. So another example is useFetch, for instance, which in this case is going to be fetching data from a specified API endpoint. So pretty much you can see over here that what we're doing is really we're setting it through setting constant recording of data, error loading, and pretty much just having useFetch. And what we want to do here is that we want to be able to then use it for being able to keep track of data state and also fetch the state accordingly so that we can also initiate useEffect to be able to fetch when the URL changes. And this really is able to simplify data fetching logic across components, because we want to be able to have this similar data fetching logic across different components in our React application. And you can see over there that that's what I'm doing. I'm pretty much appropriately setting the data and fetching the data. And this is essentially how we're able to continue doing this fetching of the data across the components. So here's where context then comes in. So we want to be able to then use the context API to be able to provide the global state across multiple components. And what we want to do, essentially, is to be able to also have custom hooks to be able to encapsulate the complex logic that goes on within these environments. So here's an example of how it's being incorporated in this case solution. So pretty much having story provider and use stories hook. So we want to be able to provide the global state for stories, contributions, votes, which you can see over here. We're appropriately having a story context provider, setting the value to story manager, and pretty much just returning the children properly. So we're essentially using this to be able to keep track of how use stories is, and pretty much feeding that with use context so that we're able to appropriately get that to manage the state. And essentially, we use Story Manager to be able to manage the state basically from there. We can then add onto that complexity by also considering authentication too. So in this case, we're going to be implementing like a very simple authentication mechanism hook. So in this case, it's going to be a use auth hook, which basically is just wrapping the application with the authentication context. And what this does is that we really want to be able to keep track of the user authentication throughout the site. And for all of you that have been working on React applications, especially those that require authentication, this is probably a common pattern, and essentially it's a very important one, considering that oftentimes we need to keep track of the authentication of users across the site and make sure that the user is able to get in, authenticate wherever they need to be, and is not able to get in whenever they should not. And this is able to also simplify access to the global auth state across the app as well. And we want to be able to essentially synchronize the state. So as we move along different pages, different components, we need to be able to synchronize this state. And through using this hook to be able to use auth, check the authentication status, as we can see over in the code there, we're able to continuously check and continuously look at the different parts of the website, and essentially have the different parts of the website continually check if the user is currently authenticated, which is a very important thing, especially when they are looking to perform applications, actions, which only an authenticated user should be able to. Now, let's delve a bit more into the lightweight state management, in particular with context and hooks. So it's often much more of a lightweight alternative, I would say, for Redux in particular, for simple global state. It generally really helps with being able to create clear and concise code. So there's a lot of great things that we can achieve from using this in particular, which is it's suitable for authentication, team toggling, user preferences, and this is also what I'll get into a bit as well. So one of the things that I'll show right after this slide is, in particular, using the use theme hook for light and dark theme state, because I know quite a number of people here, I think it was established as well before too, that I think a lot of devs really enjoyed that dark light mode, pretty much switcheroo, and I think most people enjoy dark mode, but yep. So it's something that pretty much can be poured on into the cauldron as well, into the complexity. So we can pretty much have a use theme hook in this case. So as we can see, we're creating a new context called theme context. And what we're really trying to do here is that we're really trying to create a state which can keep track of the theme. So in this particular case scenario, we can see there that we're just having a theme provider appropriately set the theme. So essentially, just think of it as your normal day-to-day website. You want to go dark mode, so you toggle it on and toggle it off. This helps to be able to keep the track of context across the website, essentially. And hence, we need to be able to continually have the synchronization to be able to keep track of this. And So in this case, we're using use context, theme context, to be able to read or toggle the theme. So let's talk a bit more about some advanced context techniques. So there are 3 things that I want to bring into consideration as well, which we'll cover quickly as well. So pretty much the context split pattern, which essentially is more or less just a way for you to be able to separate context for distinct concerns. We'll be showing a bit about that as well in a bit. And you'll also pretty much be able to also improve the clarity from this and minimize unnecessary renders, because you're essentially separating the different contexts for only what you need instead of creating a complex component which you are going to be refreshing all the time and causing more refreshes than necessary or synchronization than necessary. Memoization, it's a very important technique as well of context, which essentially helps you to optimize the rendering through being able to prevent expensive recalculations for values that are unchanged. And compound components, which allow you to be able to share common context and improve essentially the usability and shared state management. So we're going to be looking at complex split pattern as well, and I want to draw your attention in particular to the 2 different codes that you see over there. So we can see there that in one, we have user context. In the second one, we have theme context. So in the user context, we really want to keep track of the user info in particular, and as you can see over here. And in the theme context, we want to keep track of the theme itself. So that's why we're implementing distinct providers for each concern, because we want to be able to ensure that refreshes or synchronizations are always done pretty much only within the context of when they are needed. So splitting this kind of context is a really good pattern to take into consideration and helps with managing complex applications so that it is a bit more performant. And memoization itself, as mentioned before, is also another important thing. So important to memoize context values to optimize rendering. Again, want to draw your attention to the code over there. So what we're really trying to do over there is that we just want to prevent the theme provider component from passing a new value object on every render unless the theme changes pretty much. And that way, we're able to optimize the performance accordingly. So we can see over there, we're pretty much just using useMemo pointed to the theme, and this pretty much is able to help make the solution more performant, essentially, by preventing these expensive calculations. Compound components is also another thing that was implemented as well into the whole mix of the collaborative story platform. So what we're really trying to do is trying to have components share a common context. So we can see over here, use accordion and accordion item. Accordion context itself is also another popular pattern, pretty much, that we are really just using to be able to have a shared kind of component where accordion is able to provide the necessary context, while accordion item, as you can see over there, is able to conceal the context. So we can see over there in that case scenario, for instance, use accordion is consuming the accordion context, and yeah, pretty much we're just really wanting to be able to use it for setting an open index, and through that way, we can have the 2 components essentially share the same compound state to be able to manage across the application. So now we're going to be going quickly into a bit of a demo. So let's hope that nothing breaks and we can just go here. So as you can see over here, it's a bit of a local state right now. So yeah, pretty much just spinning it on my machine. So this is pretty much the collaborative story writing platform I was talking about. We can, yeah, pretty much like toggle dark or light. As you can see over here, it's not fully dark mode, but I pretty much just wanted to make sure as well that we can represent it that way, and pretty much just toggle the background essentially, and keep the box pretty much in the white color. So pretty much we can toggle it off again, and we can see the change there. And we can see the votes are also pretty much recorded here too. But what I really want you to draw your attention to in particular is the show contributions element. So we can see over here that we have 2 entries. First, the initial placeholder once upon a time, and pretty much the second item in a land far away. So let's make this a bit fun. maybe let's try to get, maybe someone to continue on from this. Does anyone have any idea of like what you would write for this, like in one sentence? Any takers? Yep.
Not my time nor your time, but a long time ago.
So not, yeah, let me just add that. So not my time. Sorry, could you continue?
Nor your time.
Nor your time.
But a long time ago.
But a long time ago. And sorry, what's your, can you have your first name?
Marissa.
Marissa? Gotcha. I hope that's the right spelling. But yeah, so we'll have that add as a contribution. So we can see there that it's added there accordingly. Now, this was originally going to be pretty much where the demo of my talk ended, but then again, we've been having a lot of discussions in the past 2 days about AI, haven't we? We've had like 3 chapters of AI. So the astute observers among you would have noticed that there is a new button now. So this is something that actually I quickly coded up and revised my talk slightly to actually integrate a bit more of a OpenAI component as well. So this is an extra state that I added in yesterday, which I just want to show a bit more to quickly just show a bit about how you can also integrate this as a hook as well to add on to the complexity and really also utilize some of your existing hooks as well. So pretty much we can see that this is a bit of a long one, but pretty much what we really want to be able to do is that we want to be able to accordingly do 3 quick things with this hooks that we have created. So pretty much at contribution, we want to be able to use the useStories hook as mentioned before. So as you can see, reusability, we're using the hooks within another different hook. And we really want to be able to get the contributions as well accordingly through what we already currently have. Accordingly, we're also handling error and also setting the loading as well as part of what we're currently doing from generating the contribution. So what I want to draw your attention to, though, is this particular case scenario. So what we want to do here is that we're pretty much just trying to call the OpenAI chat completion. So pretty much similar to what you've seen. We want to pretty much have GPT model, in this case GPT 3.5 Turbo, to be able to extend the story. And story, yeah, pretty much what the prompt we're putting through is we want to be able to extend the story, then we retrieve the past user contributions and say, and end your text with 3 trailing full stops to be able to follow through with the context. And then I said, do not repeat what was already said in the story, and instead just continue it and add 1 sentence. Because pretty much the users among you as well probably also know that the thing about GPT models is that sometimes they end up like just going on and on, so I wanted to put a limit to that. So now let's see, based on Marissa's addition there, let's try generate me a contribution. And there we see one. So now they added in, there lived a brave knight named Sir Percival, who was known throughout the kingdom for his valor and strength of battle. He had defeated many enemies and protected people from harm, but little did he know that his greatest challenge was yet to, and then people can build from there. So essentially, if you're running out of ideas, you can pretty much have GPT save you, because I think you already know as well that no matter how dry or how much of a little writer's block you're experiencing, GPT will always be able to pick up somewhere and try to essentially create something continuing for you. So that's really what I wanted to show in the demo, and navigating back to it, keeping track of time as well. So quickly about testing as well, there's 5 key rules. Isolate the logic and custom hooks, mock the context providers thoughtfully, make sure you're focusing on the appropriate state transitions and side effects, test realistic scenarios and edge cases, and make sure that integration across components and hooks is currently being implemented. And this is an example test that implemented in Jest for this particular use case. So we can see here that we're pretty much just trying to do a particular mock and saying that it should be expecting the current stories and contributions to be able to get what is already there currently. So key takeaways, use hooks and context techniques for state management. Remember Reacts whenever you're trying to manage these complex scenarios. Have clear code and prove performance. And make sure to pretty much create clear modular code and use lightweight solutions. So that is all for me. Just a quick thing, if you are interested in pretty much looking at the project repo, it's over there. If you're interested in pretty much asking questions, I'll be outside as well to answer questions later too. But if you want to ask questions after the conference, feel free to add me on, connect with me on my LinkedIn, X, or check out my GitHub or YouTube as well. So yeah, again, thank you everyone.